Rajput architecture is like a big, beautiful storybook telling us about the Rajput kingdoms. It shows us how grand and artistic they were. From big, strong forts to fancy palaces, Rajput architecture is known for its tiny details and huge buildings. These amazing buildings tell stories of brave warriors, love stories, and powerful kings and queens. They give us a peek into how the Rajput rulers and their kingdoms lived. Rajput architecture is a mix of different styles. It takes ideas from old Indian buildings and also adds some Islamic and Persian styles. You can see this mix in the arches, domes and minarets. These are combined with traditional Indian features like jarakas, khatris and baolis. This makes a unique style that is both pretty and useful. Rajput architecture isn't just big, it's also detailed. Tiny carvings, bright paintings and fancy jalis decorate the walls, ceilings and windows. These details show how skilled the Rajput artists were. They make the buildings even more rich and interesting. Rajput architecture is more than just pretty buildings. It shows us their culture and how they lived. It shows us what the Rajput people believed in and wanted. By learning about Rajput architecture, we can understand this cool time in Indian history. The Rajput kingdoms started between the 7th and 18th centuries. They were super important in India's history and culture. Rajput means son of a king. It's what they called a group of warrior families who said they came from ancient Kshatriya warriors. They became powerful when India was divided into lots of smaller areas. They made strong kingdoms in north and central India. The Rajputs were known for being brave, honorable and independent. They fought a lot, both with each other and against outsiders. All this fighting changed their architecture. They built huge forts to protect themselves. As the Rajput kingdoms got richer, they wanted bigger and better buildings. They started building grand palaces. These palaces weren't just homes for the kings and queens. They showed everyone how powerful, rich and fancy they were. They wanted to impress visitors with how grand and beautiful they were. The Rajput kingdoms were a great time for architecture in India. The Rajputs loved art. They helped create a special building style that showed their culture and values. This style, called Rajput architecture, is still amazing to see today. Rajput architecture is connected to the history of the Rajput kingdoms. The Rajputs started during a time when things were changing a lot. They were always fighting to protect their land. This changed how they built their buildings. Forts, for example, weren't just for soldiers. They were like cities inside, with places for the king, temples and markets. They were built with strong walls, many gates and secret passages to keep them safe. The style of the Rajput forts and palaces also shows what cultures influenced them. The early Rajput rulers liked the building style of the Gujara Pratihara dynasty. You can see this in the carved stonework and the tall towers on their temples called shikaras. As the Rajput kingdoms grew, they met other cultures. You can see Islamic influence in the arches, domes and minarets in later Rajput buildings. This mix of styles created a special look that is typical of Rajput architecture. How Rajput society worked and their politics were really important for their architecture. Rajputs had families called clans and they were very organized. Being loyal and a good warrior was very important. You can see this social structure in how Rajput forts and palaces were built. These buildings had space for all the different families of the rulers and their soldiers. The Rajput kingdoms were always fighting and making alliances. This is why they built so many forts. These forts were built on hills and had thick walls to protect them. They were safe places and showed everyone how powerful they were. The palaces, on the other hand, showed how rich and fancy the Rajput rulers were. They had beautiful courtyards, gardens and private rooms. They were decorated with detailed carvings, paintings and yalis. These things made the palaces look beautiful and also kept them cool and airy.